Welcome to my first ever set review. So I've looked over these cards and I was thinking about doing this, and I'm going to do it a little bit different. I'm not going to go over every single card. I'm just going to go over the cards that I think are going to be important or played, because there's a lot of stuff in here that's just not really going to be played. This is also going to be directed towards the historic format because that's what I play mostly. So that's what I'm going to be evaluating these cards on. So if I've left something out that you like, it's probably because I don't think it's going to be good in historic specifically. And I'm going to go over some fringe cases that I think maybe there's a combo here to be had or some fun jank. So Angel of Destiny, I just think it's a cool card. 3, 4, 5. I don't think this will be played. Flying, double strike. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you and that player each gain that much life. At the beginning of your end step, if you have at least 15 life or more than your starting life total, each player Angel of Destiny attacked this turn loses the game. There's going to be some combo here. I don't know what it is right off the top of my head, but somebody's going to combo with this, or they're going to try to. They're going to attempt to break this card, because any card that says loses the game, somebody's going to try to break it. I think it's a cool card. So we'll see what happens with this. Archon of Ameria, cost 3. This will be some kind of an attack stack. Each player can't cast more than one spell each turn. Non-basic lands your opponent control enters the battlefield tapped. This will definitely see some sort of play. Whether it's good or not, I'm not sure, but this is definitely going to see some play. Amelia's Call, 4, 3 white, does 7. Create 2 4/4 white angel warrior creature tokens with flying. Non-angel creatures you control gain indestructible until your next turn. It's also a bolt land that says when it enters the battlefield, you may pay 3 life. If you don't, it enters the battlefield tapped. So you can pay 3. It comes in untapped as a white mana. And late game, for a lot of mana that's unnecessary, you can create 2 4/4 white angel tokens. So right off the top of my head, this is at least a 1 of in blue-white just for the hell of it. You know, late game, you can make 2 4/4 white angel warrior tokens. That makes one of your lands also become a win condition. So we now have one more win condition that's also attached to a land. And coming in tapped isn't that big of a deal. And if we really need it, we can pay 3 life. Kabira Takedown costs 2, and it says it deals damage equal to the number of creatures you control to target creature or planeswalker. And it's also attached to a land. I could see this maybe being played in some kind of aggressive white deck, maybe Selesnya or something. Other than that, I don't know if it's that good. That's like kind of a fringe case that I could see it being played. Now, I do want to talk about Core Blademaster. It costs 2. It's Core Warrior, double strike. Equipped warriors you control have double strike. I think because of this card, there's probably going to be some kind of Core Warrior equipment deck. I don't know if it'll be good. Somebody's going to be playing it. We'll have to wait and see, but it's definitely going to be a thing for a little bit. And that brings us to Maul of the Skyclaves. 3 mana. When it enters the battlefield, attached to the creature you control. Equipped creature gets 2/2, has flying, and first strike. So this is going to go hand in hand with Core Blademaster. These will be in the same deck. It's going to see play. We don't know if it's going to be good, but they'll both see play in some kind of aggressive equipment deck. Probably Boros with Embercleave. Makindi Stampede, 3 4 5. Creatures you control get 2/2 until end of turn, and it's a land. It's probably going to be like a 1 of in some kind of aggressive creature deck just because. Maybe not. I'm not too sure, but it seems like it could see play. It's kind of hard to evaluate these land cards. Undo Inversion, 6 7 8 mana. Destroy all non-land permanents. It's attached to a land. This bad boy is going in my control deck. It's at least a 1 of. There's like little downside to it, and sometimes you want to destroy all non-land permanents. Maybe you have 8 mana. Blue-white's goal is to like drag the game out as long as possible, so this is definitely going to see some play. Tajiri Shelter costs 2. Target creature you control gains protection from color of your choice until end of turn. This might see some play just because of the lands attached to it. Other than that, it's not very good. That's the only way I see it being played, is just because it has a land attached to it, and this is pretty cool too for some kind of aggressive deck. Skyclave Apparition, 3 mana, Core Spirit. When it enters the battlefield, exile up to 1 target non-land, non-token permanent you don't control with converted mana cost 4 or less. When it leaves the battlefield, the exiled card's owner creates an XX blue illusion creature token where X is the converted mana cost of the exiled card. That's a mouthful, but this might see some play in the blue-white spirit deck. It does some things. It's a spirit. It's white. It'll probably see some play. Here's another land card, Skyclave Basilica. It enters the battlefield tapped as white. Has a creature attached to it. When the creature enters the battlefield, you gain 2 life. It's a 2 mana 1/3. I personally wouldn't run this, but I feel like since there's a land attached to it, somebody somewhere is going to be running this. Tazim Raptor, 3 mana. I just think this is a cool card. When it enters the battlefield, you may return a land you control to its owner's hand. So there may be some kind of combo deck eventually that uses this. And this is also important because these spells that are attached to these lands We can play them as lands, and then later in the game, if we need the spells, we can actually use this card to bounce that land back to our hand and use the spell if we wanted to. Now, is that going to be good? Is that something we want to do? I'm not exactly sure, but I would look out for this card, keep it in mind, maybe somehow, some way, this is decent. It sounds more like some kind of combo piece to me than anything else, but I think it's a really cool card. And I also like the art. Look at that little boy there. Anti-Cognition. It costs 2. Counter target creature or planeswalker spell unless its controller pays 2. If an opponent has 8 or more cards in its graveyard, instead counter that spell, then scry 2. So if they have 8 or more cards in their graveyard, this just becomes a hard counter for a creature or planeswalker for 2 mana. Now, this card is pretty good. This is probably going to replace Essence Scatter in my blue-white deck. Maybe I run 2 main board. It's pretty flexible. Planeswalkers aren't such a huge deal, but the fact that it hits creatures and planeswalkers for 2 mana, a hard counter later, this is just good. This one is another land card. I don't think it's good, but I'm going to go over it because it's new and exciting. It enters the battlefield tapped to add a blue. Creatures you control get -2 until end of turn. Maybe if you have blue, you might run one of these just for the hell of it, but personally, I wouldn't run this almost ever, I think. Charix, the Raging Isle, 4 mana. Legendary creature, Leviathan Crab. Spells your opponent's cast that target this cost 2 more to cast. 3, Charix gets +X, -X until the end of turn, where X is the number of islands you control. I can definitely see this being played. It's a 0/17. I don't exactly know how it's going to be good, but it's going to be played. It's kind of hard to get rid of because if they have removal, it costs 2 more. It's a chunky boy for something. It's just a cool card. Somebody's going to play it. I might even play it. Confounding Conundrum. One of the cards I'm probably most excited for in this set. It costs 2. It's an enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, you draw a card, so it cantrips. It replaces itself. When a land enters the battlefield under your opponent's control, if that player had another land enter the battlefield under their controller's turn, they return a land they control to its owner's hand. So most notably, this comes out before Uro, bounces a land if they play another one, so it's like kind of like anti-ramp. But I think the possibility for some kind of like meme combo here is better than just stopping ramp. Like, yeah, it's good against like probably Sultai and Bant, but otherwise we could run Field of Ruins, zap their land, bounce a land. It just creates some kind of annoying tempo, especially if you have more than just one of these on the battlefield. I'd look out because it could be pretty good. Deliberate, I'd expect for you to see someone play this. It costs 2 mana, scry 2 and then draw a card. It's like, it's kind of on the level of Opt. Somebody's going to play it, I think. Field Research. Now, this card is essentially a divination with a kicker, so you can draw an extra card. Not really going to be good. You might see me play this in some kind of like stupid meme Turbo Fog or Mill deck, but I would definitely play this over Divination, and sometimes you will see me play Divination in some deck. I play a lot of meme decks in my free time that aren't good. Glasspool Mimic costs 3. It's attached to a land. You may have this card enter the battlefield as a copy of a creature you control, except it's a shapeshifter rogue in addition to its other types. I would expect for you to see this in probably the Garuda combo deck. Other than that, like blue-white probably doesn't want to run this unless maybe you're running a Dream Trawler, but mainly in the Garuda deck, I see this one being played. Into the Royal, 2. Kicker 2. So this is just blink of an eye. Return target non-land permanent to its owner hand. If it was spell was kicked, draw a card. This is exactly the same. So I think it's a good card. Blink of an eye is a good card. It'll probably see some play. There's not really a reason to use one over the other, I don't think. Jawari's Disruption. Counter target spell unless its controller pays 1. Attached to a tapped blue land. I can see this. It's like a sensor that you can't cycle. It's like a sensor that doesn't have cycling, but it's a land instead. I could see this being played. I don't think it's very good because I think the main reason Censor is good is because you can ditch it. I guess the argument here is that instead of ditching it, you can play it for more mana, but maybe, we'll see. Maddening Cacophony, 2. I don't think this card is going to be good. I'm just going to preface this here. Each opponent mills 8 cards. If the spell was kicked, instead, each opponent mills half their library rounded up. So it costs 2 to mill 8, costs 6, and you mill half their library. So I don't think this is very good. I will definitely play this in some capacity because I love mill. Negate, too. We all know what Negate does. This card's always good. It's always going to be a staple in Standard. It looks like it's pretty much a staple in Historic now, too. A lot of times, I think it sees play in Modern as well. I'm not 100% sure on that. But this is the best art that I've seen so far. I really like this. That's why I'm including it. Ruin Crab, 1. Landfall. Whenever land enters a battlefield under your control, each opponent mills 3 cards. This goes with Maddening Cacophony. I don't necessarily think this card is good, but it is a card you will see me play, and you will see other people play it. Mill is an archetype that always sucks, but you have a ton of people playing it. If Mill is good, you probably don't want to play the format. Seagate Restoration, 4+3. 3 blue. Draw cards equal to the number of cards in your hand plus 1. You have no maximum hand size for the rest of the game. It is a both land. You'll definitely see this as at least a 1-of in blue-white control. Probably other blue decks you would see this in some capacity. I'm definitely going to run this in blue-white control. Seagate Stormcaller, it costs 2. Kicker is 5. When it enters the battlefield, copy the next instant or sorcery spell with converted mana cost 2 or less. You cast this turn when you cast it. If Seagate Stormcaller was kicked, copy that spell twice. Instead, you may choose new targets for the copies. So I don't know for sure if this card's going to be good. I think it has potential to be good. You could use it with the low-cost instant sorceries, kind of like the Arcanist deck. So like Claim or Thought Seeds, and just get a lot of value that way. Silundi Vision, it costs 3. Look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may reveal an instant or sorcery card from among them and put them into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. It is also a tapped land that gives you 1 blue. So this is another thing that's going to be probably a 1-of in my blue-white control deck, because why not? It is a land, it does things, seems good. It could be bad, who knows? I'm definitely going to test it out. Thieving Skydiver 2. Kicker X. X can't be 0. Flying. When it enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, gain control of target artifact or converted mana with converted mana cost X or less. If that artifact is an equipment, attach it to Thieving Skydiver. So I mentioned this as probably a sideboard card for some kind of Merfolk or Dimir Rogue deck. You could use it against ovens. It doesn't say gain control until end of turn. It just says gain control. So you steal the oven. You can steal an Embercleave if you have a lot of mana. You have to pay a lot for that, but it is possible you can do it. That's the only reason I mention this. I think it'll probably see some fringe play in decks like that. This one says it's a blue tapped land, and whenever you cast an instant or sorcery or wizard spell, this card gains flying until end of turn. It's a 4/3 for 5. I don't think this is very good. This probably is not going to see play like some of the other land cards. Speaking of, Agadeem's Awakening X, black. Sorcery. Return from your graveyard to the battlefield any number of target creature cards that each have different converted mana cost X or less. It is a bolt land that gives black mana. This one's going to see some play. It seems pretty good. You know, it's a land. It does things later if you need it to. That's pretty good. Blood Chief's Thirst. You come in here, you probably know about this card. You probably heard about it. It's going to be pretty good. It costs 1 mana. Destroy target creature or planeswalker with converted mana cost 2 or less. If you pay 4 instead, then it destroys target creature or planeswalker. Mana cost doesn't matter. This will be pretty good. It hits a lot of things. Arcanist, Croxa, Core Spirit Dancer. There's no planeswalkers in Historic that are 2 or less. Maybe they print some one day, but for right now, it's good removal for people things. If it was an instant, this card would be really strong. Feed the Swarm. Sorcery 2. Destroy target creature, enchantment, and opponent controls. You lose life equal to the permanent's converted mana cost. I could see Arcanist or some other black-based decks running this just because it can remove a creature or enchantment, and like Grixis, for example, kind of scoops if an enchantment hits the board because they typically don't have any way to remove that. So Hagura Broodpit is a tapped black land. The spell costs 1 less to cast if an opponent controls no basic lands. Destroy target creature. So it costs 4 if they have no basic lands, and it costs 3. I could see this being like a 1-of in a black deck just because it can be a land or a kill spell for 4. Sometimes kill for 4 is more important than a land, and sometimes a land is more important than that. So I definitely see this one getting some play in black decks. Malakir Rebirth. 1 black mana. Choose target creature. You lose 2 life. Until end of turn, that creature gains. When this creature dies, return it to the battlefield tapped under its owner's control. And it's a tapped land. So I definitely think this one will see some play in something like Arcanist, because, like, for example, if we're playing Arcanist and we have that black 1 mana card on the battlefield that mills ourself. I can't remember what it's called. We have that, and we play that sacrifice, draw some cards. And then you can play this on top of that if you have enough mana. That thing dies, draws you cards, comes back, tapped, and then, I mean, it's just some gas. So I definitely think this will be played in the Arcanist deck. At least as a 1 or 2 of, probably. There's not much downside, because you can just replace a land with this. These are kind of hard to evaluate, but I think a lot of these are going to see play. I don't think they're going to be completely broken like a lot of people think they are, but they will be very good. Mind Carver costs 1. When it is a battlefield, attached to target creature you control. Creature gets +1, +0. It gets +3 instead, as long as your opponent has 8 or more cards in your graveyard. I could see this going in that equipment deck. I just want to mention this really quick. The Core Warrior equipment deck, I could see this going in there. Nighthawk Scavenger, 3 mana. It's a rogue. Flying Death Touch, lifelink. Nighthawk Scavenger power is equal to 1 plus a number of card types among cards in your opponent's graveyard. So I can see maybe this going in like that Dimir Rogue deck. That deck's not very good, but somebody will probably play it. This one is a land, black mana. For 3 mana, target opponent reveals their hand. You choose a card from it with converted mana cost 3 or greater. That player discards that card. Probably see some play just because of the nature of this card, but I don't like it, and I probably wouldn't play it. Scourge of the Skyclaves, 2, kicker, 5. When you cast this spell, if it was kicked, each player loses half their life rounded up. Scourge of the Skyclaves' power and toughness are each equal to 20 minus the highest life total among players. This makes me think of like a scuffed Death's Shadow. Somebody's going to try to break this. I don't think it's very good. Zoff Bloodbog is a black tapped land. It costs 6 mana. Each opponent loses 4 life and you gain 4 life. This is definitely going to be like a 1 or 2 of in some decks. I mean, just the extra reach or the gain life late game can come in handy. There's lots of times like Control tries to squeak out with, you know, 4 or less life, and you can just hit them with this real quick. Or it's a land. Speaking of lands, we have Akum Teeth. It enters the battlefield tapped. Gives you a red mana. 6 mana, 4/5. This is probably not going to see play. Red decks are usually aggressive and fast. You don't really want this attached to a tapped land. I don't see this being played at all, ever, really. Cleansing Wildfire, 2. Destroy target lands. Its controller may search the library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle their library, draw a card. So you can destroy your own lands with this. You can destroy your opponent's lands with this. I think this is going to be a good card. Somebody somewhere is going to use it. It will definitely have a place in Historic, I'm sure. There's already like a land destruction deck going around that's kind of bad. This will make it not much better, but it'll do some things. Fireblade Charger costs 1. It's a Goblin Warrior. As long as it is equipped, it has haste. When it dies, it deals damage equal to its power to any target. This is gonna be used in the core warrior equipment deck, probably like a Boros, maybe a Mardu or something. We'll have to see. I think it'll definitely get some play. I don't think it'll be super good or anything. Kazul's Fury, 3. As an additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice a creature. It deals damage equal to the sacrificed creature's power to any target. So it's a 3 mana fling, and it has a tapped land attached to it. This is gonna see play in red aggressive decks. It'll probably even see play in maybe like the Teamer ramp deck. You can sack one of your creatures, boom, 6 damage to the face. You sack your Uro, right? Leyline Tyrant, 4. Dragon, flying. You don't lose unspent red mana as steps and phases in. When it dies, you may pay any amount of red. When you do, it deals that much damage to any target. It's a 4/4. This is definitely going to see some play. It's a 4/4 flying dragon for 4. It basically lets you keep mana. You're just ramping. I could definitely see this in the Teamer deck. Teamer ramp would probably want to play some number of these, maybe even as a 1-of. It would still be pretty good. Morog, Fury of Akum, 4/5, 6 mana. Each creature you control gets +1/+0 for each time it has attacked this turn. Landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, if it's your main phase, there's an additional combat phase after this phase. At the beginning of that combat, untap all creatures you control. The 6/6. There's gonna be some. This is gonna have its place in some kind of combo meme jank deck. I would definitely play it. Nahiri's Lithoforming, X, red. Sacrifice X lands. For each land sacrificed this way, draw a card. You may play X additional lands this turn. Lands you control enter the battlefield tapped this turn. So this is some kind of like meme jank that I think somebody's gonna play somewhere, right? Somebody's gonna play this. Scavenged Blade, 2. It's an equipment. When it enters the battlefield, attach it to target creature you control. Equipped creature gets +2/+0. You might see this in like core warrior deck. Maybe. We'll see. Shatter Skull Smashing, X, red. It deals X damage divided as you choose among up to 2 target creatures and or planeswalkers. If X is 6 or more, then it deals twice X damage divided among you choose. So it's kind of like a semi-sweeper that's attached to a bolt land. You're going to see this in Teamer. Teamer's going to use the hell out of it. Then we have Songmad Treachery. It's a 5 mana act of treason. Gain control of target creature until end of turn. Untap that creature. It gains haste until end of turn. Attached to a tapped land. This is also something you would probably see in Teamer because it's a land. And if they need to take control of, say, a Croxa, an enemy Uro or something, they have that ability. It's very flexible. Bikefield Hazard is another one that I think is pretty good. It's 1 mana. Deals 1 damage to any target. That's semi-irrelevant in most cases. If a permanent dealt damage this way would die this turn, exile instead. This is important for like Croxas and Uros. When they come down the first time, you can hit them with this, and then they're sacrificed and get exiled. And it's attached to a tapped land. So if you don't need it, you don't need it. You just play it as a tapped land. 3. Put any number of cards from your hand onto the bottom of your library. Then draw that many cards. +1. Valakut Awakening. It's attached to a tap land. You probably see this. It's like a 1 or 2 of in Teamer. Current hand you have is shit. You can spend 3 mana and, you know, get a new one. Valakut Exploration, 3 mana. Landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card for as long as it remains exiled. At the beginning of your end step, if there are cards exiled with Valakut Exploration, put them into their owner's graveyards. Then Valakut Exploration deals that much damage to each opponent. I can see this being played somewhere. I don't know exactly how it's going to be good, but it sounds like something that could get pretty nuts in a combo. Ancient Green Warden, Reach, 5/7. It costs 6. You may play lands from your graveyard. If a land entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability or permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. I'm only mentioning this one because it could see some fringe play in some kind of combo deck. It's definitely like a combo piece, you know? Ashaya, Soul of the Wild, 5 mana. Its power and toughness are equal to the number of lands you control. That's pretty decent, especially for some kind of ramp deck. Non-token creatures you control are forest lands in addition to their other types. This goes along with Ancient Green Warden. These are both going to be some kind of like combo piece. Probably not going to be very good, but you could definitely see them played. This one is a tapped green land, and it says, return target card from your graveyard to your hand. Right off the bat, I'm thinking like Golgari's probably going to play like a couple of these. Other than that, I don't really see any situation where they're super amazing. Regplate Baloth, 5/6/7. The spell can't be countered. Hexproof and haste. If it was kicked, it enters the battlefield with 4/1/1 counters on it. This will most definitely be played in some kind of stompy deck. It kind of replaces Carnage Tyrant because it can't be countered. It's hexproof and it has haste. That's a big chunky boy. I could definitely see it being played in some stompy decks, maybe some ramp decks against control specifically. Inscription of Abundance, 2. Instant. Kicker, 3. Choose one. If spells kick, choose any. So you get to put 2 counters on something, or target player gains X life, where X is the greatest power among creatures they control. Target creature you control fights. Target creature you don't control. This is definitely like a green stompy card that you'll probably see played in Historic. They already run fight spells. This is better than some of their fight spells. Somebody's going to be playing this. There's another land card. Enters the battlefield tapped. Green mana. The Mammoth, 3 mana. Landfall. Whenever land enters the battlefield under your control, this Mammoth gets 2/2 until end of turn. This will probably just be played because it's a land or a creature. That's probably pretty good for green stompy decks. Maybe even Gruul. So here's a fight spell that is attached to a land. Target creature you control fights target creature you don't control. I think this will probably see some play in the green stompy decks just because it's a land. Also a fight spell. It's possible it also might not because they kind of like to, those decks kind of like to play on curve, and maybe they don't want a whole bunch of tapped lands. We'll have to see how that plays out. So Lotus Cobra, I know there's been some talk about this. 2 mana. Landfall, whenever land enters the battlefield under your control, add 1 mana of any color. There's a lot of talk going around about how fast you get Uro out and stuff. I don't personally think this is going to be an issue, especially not in Historic. So this is kind of like a standard combo. You can like play this and all this other junk. But as far as Historic is concerned, this isn't going to make too many waves, I don't think. Roiling Regoth, 3. Sacrifice a land, search your library for up to 2 basic land cards, put them onto the battlefield tapped, and shuffle your library. Maybe this sees play. It's 3 mana. Ramp 1? I don't know. Maybe. Seems like it could be pretty good, but maybe like Cultivate's just better still. But it is an instant, so like that makes it a little bit better. Skyclave Pickaxe, it's an equipment. Maybe you see this go along with that Core Warrior I was talking about, maybe not. Just gonna mention it because it could be in there somewhere. I think there's gonna be some equipment deck. Maybe it's not good. We'll just have to see. But people are gonna be playing it. So here's a tapped land with Mana Dork attached to it. This will probably be pretty good. Tangled Florahedron, cost 2, add 1 green mana, 1/1. So it's like ramp, otherwise if you need a land, it's a land. So here's one of the Bolt lands. It's a green mana, enters the battlefield tapped unless you pay 3 life. Costs 7 mana. Look at the top 7 cards of your library. You may put a creature card from among them onto the battlefield. That card has a converted mana cost 3 or less. It enters with 3 additional 1/1 counters on it. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. I definitely see this getting some play in some green decks. Definitely some, probably the stompy decks. And this is also kind of like a combo card, I guess, if you have a ton of mana. But it's going to get played just because it has a land that can come in untapped as well. At worst, it's a land you pay 3 for. So here's Akiri Fearless Voyager, and this kind of goes along with the Warrior equipment deck I was talking about. 3 mana. Whenever you attack a player with 1 or more equipped creatures, draw a card. For 1 white, you may unattach an equipment card from a creature you control. If you do, tap that creature and it gains indestructible. So I definitely think this one will probably be played in some. This is probably more of a standard kind of deck that I've been talking about too. Maybe it doesn't show up in Historic. There might not be enough cards that are powerful enough for Historic, but I think anything's possible. But this will probably definitely be a deck in standard. So this cleric of Lifespawn will probably be played in some kind of, you know, black-white life gain nonsense jank. I don't think it'll be good, but this is the type of thing that you'll see played. Here's a Warrior Lord card to go along with the Warrior equipment deck I was talking about. Probably going to see this in some capacity, at least in Standard. I can see Kaza Royal Chaser being in some kind of like stupid wizard deck. Is it wizards? Probably won't be good. Somebody's going to try to make it work though. So here's Nahiri, Heir of the Ancients. 4 mana, Boros. Create a 1/1 white core creature token, warrior. You may attach an equipment card you control to it. That's a +1. She starts at 4, so she goes up to 5. -2, look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may reveal a warrior equipment card from among them and put it onto your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. -3, Nahiri deals damage to target creature or planeswalker equal to twice the number of equipments you control. So this one might go into an equipment warrior deck as well. I think this is a little expensive for what that deck would want to be doing. Maybe if it's more, it ends up being more of a mid-range like grindy deck, you'd see this in there. But I have a feeling that's probably going to be more of an aggressive deck, and you might not see maybe like 1 or 2 of. Nissa of Shadowed Burrows. 4, Golgari. Landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, put a loyalty counter on Nissa of Shadowed Bows. Untap target land you control. You may have it become a 3/3 elemental creature with haste and menace until end of turn. It is still a land. You may put a creature card with converted mana cost less than or equal to the number of lands you control onto the battlefield from your hand or graveyard with 2 1/1 counters on it. So, I mean, I definitely think this will see some play. Just untapping a target land is kind of like rampant itself. It's not like the other Nissa. It's not as good as the other Nissa, but I still think it'll be pretty good. This Omnath, Locus of Creation. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card, so it cantrips right away. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 4 life. If this is the first time this ability has resolved this term, if it's the second time, add 4 mana. If it's the third time, Omnath deals 4 damage to each opponent and each planeswalker you control. This is going to be some kind of like... This is like a combo piece. Somebody's going to play this and try to break it for sure. Maybe it happens, maybe it doesn't. Soaring Thought Thief. Demir. Creature, human rogue. Flash, flying. It's a 1/3. As long as an opponent has 8 or more cards in their graveyard, rogues you control get +1/+0. Whenever 1 or more rogues you control attack, each opponent mills 2 cards. This probably has a place in that Demir rogue deck that's going around. That deck's not very good. I don't think this is going to make it good. But it'll probably see some play, definitely. It'll make that deck kind of research for a little bit while people test if it's good or not. Forsaken Monument, it costs 5. Colorless creatures you control get +2/+2. Whenever you tap a permanent for colorless, add an additional colorless. Whenever you cast colorless spell, you gain 2 life. I could definitely see this in some kind of like artifact deck for sure. There's one going around that was splashing white for that enchantment, and this just... is that enchantment, but better, also more expensive. So maybe some kind of colorless ramp. I'm not exactly sure. I think it's a cool card. Somebody's gonna play it. I might play it. Lithoform Engine, 4 mana. 2 and tap. Copy target activated triggered ability you control. You may choose new targets for the copy. 3. Copy target instant sorcery spell you control. You may choose new targets for the copy. 4. Copy target permanent spell you control. The copy becomes a token. This is gonna be some fringe play and some kind of combo or something. I think it's a really cool card. It probably isn't good, but I like it. So you might see Skyclave Relic in some capacity. 3. It costs 3. It's a little ramp. If you kick it for 6, then you create a bunch of tapped tokens for ramp. So maybe you see this in some kind of ramp deck. I doubt it, but maybe. Otherwise, most of these artifacts they kind of seem a little meh to me. Nothing's really sticking out too much, but you never know. Artifacts are one of those things that could just be broken randomly. There'll just be some artifact combo. All right, for the lands, we have Base Camp. Enters the battlefield tapped, add colorless, add 1 mana, spend this mana only to cast party stuff or to activate the ability. This is definitely like going to be like a limited card. For these lands, these are pretty cool. These come in untapped. They are modal, so on one side you have add white mana land, and on the other side you have add green mana land. These aren't going to affect historic too much. Maybe for some like an aggressive dual color deck where they don't want to have the tapped lands from a Monkette that cycle, these would probably be pretty good in there. Other than that, historic's not gonna like really see these too much. Maybe for a splash. These will be really good in standard though, so these are really for standard, not historic. Crawling Barrens, the land, add colorless. For 4, you put 2 1/1 counters on it. Then you may have it become a 0/0 elemental creature until end of turn. It's still land. This is going in blue-white in historic. Maybe as a 1/of, maybe 2, who knows. But it's a land that produces a colorless mana, comes in untapped, and for 4 you can put 2 counters on it and attack, and then those counters stay. So then the next turn you can put 2 more and it'll be a 4/4, and then the next turn it'll be a 6/6. It's just like once you gain control of the board, this thing can really close the game out. And I think blue-white is looking for more kind of utility things and lands like this. We have a lot of full art basics that look pretty nice. I really like this one right here, this little whirlpool. And then we have our specials and stuff like that. So pretty much went over everything that I can think of. If there's anything I missed, or like some combos that I missed or something, and you would like me to go over, you know, let me know in the comments. I hope you enjoyed my set review. It's mostly focused around historic. So please like or subscribe if you have not already, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.